योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोतं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि। आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम्।
As you have seen in episodes thus far, Iyengar Yoga lays a lot of emphasis on precision and alignment. Why is this? Usually, an asana is not about just assuming a posture. It is a process that is done with a lot of awareness and a lot of watchfulness. Every part of the body must be evenly and uniformly engaged while doing an asana. The touch of an asana should have gone to every nook and corner of the body. This means it is not just about doing any action in order to go to a position, it is about mindful, intelligent action. Sometimes while going into a pose, you will feel some parts of the body that are heavy, sluggish, dull, other parts of the body that are overactive and aggressive. This mismatch will not make it an asana. Thus, one has to do an asana the way a river flows. The touch of an asana should be to all parts of the body in a way that is abundant and uniform. And hence, these aspects of alignment and precision are very important. In today's episode, we will see Paschimottanasana. Paschimottanasana is also called Ugrasana or Brahmacharyasana, which means this is one formidable pose while at the same time builds self-restraint. Hatha Yoga Pratipika, one of the leading texts in yoga, mentions how formidable Paschimottanasana is. Now we will move on and see how to do Paschimottanasana. We will now see how to do Paschimottanasana. To start Paschimottanasana, the student has to sit in Dandasana. In Dandasana, firstly the feet and toes are together, the entire length of the legs are together. Usually what happens is there is a tendency to drop the feet. Using this, a person may proceed to Paschimottanasana. That should not be done. The thighs should be rolled in nicely, such that the entire face of the quadricep, face of the knee, face of the shin is parallel, centered and parallel to the ceiling. Now, for example, if a person was to drop the thigh out, you see the thigh is falling out, knee is falling out, shin is falling out. This is not parallel to the ceiling. You have to roll your thighs in such a way that the musculature and the skeletal structure of the leg is centered. It has to be on a medial straight line. That being the case, rolling the thighs in, you will have to nicely press the thigh down. The calf muscle must be spread such that end to end of the calf muscle should be felt sitting, plugged to the ground. Similarly, end to end of the thigh must be fully felt on the ground. Many a time when the leg, for example, is dropped, only one end of the calf muscle or one end of the thigh muscle is touching the ground. However, when you roll the leg, you have to make sure that the back of the thigh is squarely placed. Both the inner edge as well as the outer edge of the thigh should be fully pressed to the ground. Calf muscle should spread end to end and be pasted onto the ground. With that action, the entire surface of the knee, the patella must be, or the kneecap must be tightened, lifted up, and then the knee itself must be descended down as if the front knee is going down towards the back knee. With that strong action of the leg, you have to extend the inner ankle as well as the outer ankle. The heel pad should be well extended. The toe mounds also should be extended, especially the big toe mound should be extended, and then the toes itself should be relaxed and long, as if from the foot the toe is growing up. The toe should be relaxed and long, the leg at the heel, at the mound of the big toe should be active. So this is the position of the leg, which is very, very sturdy, and this sturdy environment should be created, on top of which the spine should be activated. Now, how do we activate the spine? Pressing the leg, the abdomen should separate away from the leg. Usually when a person sinks the chest, you see the abdomen hangs over the thigh, hangs over the pelvis. That is a wrong action. Pressing on the thigh, you have to sharply lift the entire front face of the spine. You have to roll the shoulders back, make the collarbone wide from the center of the chest. You have to widen the chest. From the base of the chest, you have to nicely lift the chest up also. How do we check that the chest is lifted? The back ribs must be strongly engaged forward. When the back ribs are not engaged, the chest will sink and the back ribs will protrude. But you have to engage the back ribs nicely and raise the chest up. When that happens, there is a clear cut. See the direction of movement of the t-shirt, the fibers of the t-shirt. There's a clear cut extension of the abdomen upward. Again, I'll tell you why the t-shirt. For example, when a person sinks, you see how the t-shirt droops down. When there is a movement of the back ribs and a raise of the side body and the chest, the t-shirt itself demonstrates an upward stretch. That active action should come. From this platform of Dandasana, you take your hands up to Urdhva Hastasana. In Urdhva Hastasana, the side of the body should be well stretched from the floating rib, that is the last rib, all the way to the outer armpit. You should have a good stretch upward from the outer armpit all the way to the fingertip. You have to lead with a stretch that is non-compromising. Usually, when the spine raises, the leg would want to come up. That's what happens when you start as a beginner. But with your will and volition, you have to keep the thigh down while at the same time keep the spine raised. Pull the back ribs in and take the arm behind the ear, relaxing the throat. From this position, keeping the back ribs in, you have to proceed and hold your big toe. Using your middle and forefinger, you have to wrap your hands around the big toe, from where once again powerfully pulling the back ribs in, you have to raise the chest up. Now as you pull the back ribs in and raise the chest up, you will see that the arm becomes straight, and because the arm pulls the toes back, the legs are also uncompromisingly straight, upon which you have a triangular structure, spine up, hand straight, leg straight. From here, you will have to proceed to the full pose, where once again, keeping the back ribs in, you proceed forward, widening your elbows constantly. Your elbows should not be dropped down, your elbows should be kept lifted, and from the side body you must stretch. From the back body, as we said, posterior extension, the entire spine posteriorly should expand, spreading from center side and moving from back to front. Usually in Paschimottanasana, the buttock tends to be heavy and sluggish. You have to move the buttock back, sharpening the buttock back thigh to buttock bone, and with that sharp action you have to flow into Paschimottanasana, giving the entire spine a concrete flowing extension. Elbows should be up and you will have to stay in this pose for a while. While coming out of this, once again you reverse. You have to go into the concave back position. Go back to Urdhva Hastasana and come with your arms by the sides of the hip. This is Paschimottanasana. In this, there are a few variations by which you can hold the foot, which we will show you now. There are 4 positions in Paschimottanasana at which the feet can be held. The first is what we showed you now, where the hands, as in the forefinger and middle finger, wrap the big toe, and that is the first hold. That is a hold that a beginner can go with or start with. We will now show you all the 4 progressions. The first, where the practitioner uses the middle toe, the middle finger and the forefinger to wrap around the big toe. So there is a full-fledged curvature that the fingers take around the big toe. This makes it Padangushta Dandasana. Angushta hands, Padam leg, Padangushta Dandasana, where there is a wrapping of the toes. Here, holding this, you will have to pull back on the toe, and therefore this gives an opening to the sole of the foot as well as a good solid descent to the legs entirely. This is the first position, holding which you will have to go then to Paschimottanasana with a posterior extension. This is the first position. The second position is where the hands are then using or holding the outer foot. By outer foot, I mean the outer end of the foot or the outer edge of the foot, and the hand goes approximately at the middle outer edge of the foot. So holding, you will once again have to pull the outer edge of the foot back, and therefore this gives a horizontal spreading of the soles of the feet as well as an extension to the inner ankle. Here again, this hold will start from Padangushta Dandasana, where a person is at concave back position. So using this hold, you have to pull the back ribs in and then proceed from this point on to full Paschimottanasana with the head down and elbows up. As I said here, the hand holds the outer foot, the toes or the sole of the foot gets well spread, and then pulling on the outer edge of the foot, you have to descend the shin, descend the thigh, and move or flow with the entire posterior spine. This is the second position. The third position, a practitioner then wraps the hand around the heel. Holding the heel, when you hold the heel and pull the heel back, the entire thigh sharpens its insertion into the socket. That is, the femur bone pulls itself back into the socket. Therefore, the buttock gets lighter and sharper, with which you then go to Paschimottanasana, head down, elbows up. All these variations that we say or we've mentioned until now starts with the concave back position, and then you move to full position. The final is where one hand or finger wraps around the other hand's wrist. In this position, once again the elbows are kept, the side body is lengthened, the back body is lengthened, and then the practitioner goes to Paschimottanasana. Elbow should not hang, elbow should be up. This sharpens the side body as well. And these are the 4 holds: around the big toe, side of the foot, heel, and around the foot holding the wrist. These are 4 progressive variations where a practitioner can start with the first and move all the way to the last. We will now see how props can be used to benefit the practitioner in Paschimottanasana. Usually, when a beginner approaches this asana, sometimes the hamstrings may be tight, sometimes the spinal muscles may be very stiff or tight. When this is the case, you will see them bending their knees, unable to straighten their leg, and also really falling back on their tailbone, compressing the face of the spine. It is very important, in fact pivotal in Paschimottanasana, that the entire area of the buttock, the gluteus maximus, the muscle, should be sharp and light. Once it's heavy and thick, it really drags a person down like this. So, while practicing Paschimottanasana, you should make sure you're clearing the buttock muscle from center to side, sitting on the buttock bone. But there is the back end of the buttock bone which is closer to the tailbone, and there is the front end of the buttock bone which is sharper. You must raise the buttocks up, push the buttock back, and be on the front end of the buttock bone, not on the back end of the buttock bone. This, when you use a prop like two mats or a height to sit on, naturally happens. We will now show you how on another student. As you can now see, the practitioner is sitting on a slight raise. We are now using two thin blankets. Depending on how tight the hamstring or the back muscles are, you could raise the height to a bolster or even a stool. The minute you raise the height, because of this extended incline, the buttock muscle itself becomes a little sharper. It is important that from the back middle thigh to the back buttock, there is a sharp backward extension. It should not be a dull seated area. So, sitting on the frontal edge of the buttock bone, you have to pull the back ribs in and raise the chest up. This height gives you a tilt so that the spine can then move forward to Paschimottanasana. Move forward to Paschimottanasana. As you can see, this raised height, though minimal, puts the buttock on a higher plane and allows the spine to flow downstream. That action, sitting on a height and flowing down with the spinal muscle, happens when there is a height. We will now show you, this is a slight height, we will now show you an incremental height and show how the flowing of the spine happens more on steady legs. We will now show you a variation using the Viparita Dandasana bench. So as we just showed, using two blankets, it's a slight raise from the ground, therefore the spine then moves on an incline. There is a good ability to flow down where there is a posterior extension, an entire spinal extension, but the height is minimal. Suppose even now it is stiff. You have to make sure the legs are then opened hip width apart, the outer hip and the outer ankle are in line. But with this arrangement, we can use greater height. This is a Viparita Dandasana bench which offers greater height from the ground, and we will now show you how to use that. You will have to sit on top of a Viparita Dandasana bench, and remember there are many ribs on this bench. You will have to place the buttock on a rib. Here, the minute I sit up, the spine is aligned on the sharp point of the buttock bone. Here, even if I want to slouch and drop my tailbone, I cannot do it. We automatically rest on the sharp point of the buttock bone. This then gives a natural propulsion for the spine to then lengthen forward, which when you sit on the ground sometimes may be inhibited when you have tight hamstrings or paraspinal muscles. So when you sit on a height, it pushes you to the sharp point of the buttock bone from where you can move vertebra by vertebra, lengthening the entire surface of the spine forward. In cases where people are not able to reach their toes, like this, where you try very hard to reach but then you end up compressing your spine, pulling your head down, hunching, and despite that you are not able to reach, then there you may use a simple prop like a belt. You put the belt around your arch and then a student holds it. You can hold it at a point where you can grip and then raise the spine. For example, even at this height, let's say if a practitioner is even struggling to reach to this height, then you may pull your hand even at a greater distance and then work your spine sharply in, raising the chest up. So you have to pull the back ribs in and give yourself a good anterior extension. That is absolutely mandatory for Padangushta Dandasana, where the back ribs are in and the chest is raised up. From there, you can slowly over time crawl down the belt and work towards a position that's closer to your foot. And every time you go, it's mandatory that you have your back ribs in, the abdomen should be well raised away from the thigh, and the chest should be lifted. Gradually you can further walk down over time and hold the belt right by your foot, by the edge of the foot, and that way you can progressively build yourself towards Paschimottanasana while at the same time maintaining the integrity of the pose with the thighs down and the spine well raised. So holding a belt here, you can move to the final pose where the elbows are widening and the back muscles flow to take your head down, sternum rested but lengthened towards the shin. This would be the way you can use a belt for progressing in Paschimottanasana. In the final position of Paschimottanasana, always the head is rested but the sternum does not cave in. So the sternum has to be rested on the thigh, on the knee, so that the heart is relaxed, and upon that the head is rested. Very many times that may not happen. In other cases where people have tight backs, the abdomen may hold stiff and there may be a big gap between the abdomen and the thigh, which again causes strain on the lower back. In some other cases, the head may not rest, the head may hang up. In final Paschimottanasana, the abdomen rests on the thigh, the sternum rests on the knee and shin, and then the head rests on the shin. This is the final position of Paschimottanasana. When these three areas don't rest, we will see what we can do now using a blanket. This is a blanket, and this is how you fold it into a three-fold blanket. You fold it once and then you fold it over again. So here you have an S shape. This is a three-fold blanket. When there is abdominal strain, you keep the leg hip-width apart, or back strain, you keep the leg hip-width apart and place this blanket right at the groin. Right at the groin, lifting the abdomen away from the blanket. And then here when you bend over in Paschimottanasana, full pose, you see that the initial gap that we were showing between the thigh and the abdomen now stays bridged, where the abdomen can softly rest on the blanket. This gives a good spreading to the lower back as well, helping with both abdominal softness and paraspinal softness. This is the first arrangement. Coming up, hands straight back. In the second variation, where the sternum may not touch, we then move the blanket so that the chest and sternum may rest. In the second position, as you can see, there is a soft cushioning for which the chest may rest, the sternum may rest, and you can go into Paschimottanasana. In the third position, where the head doesn't rest, this blanket, I'm using a double fold blanket. This blanket may be placed on top of the shin. You can use much thicker prop such as a bolster, and then the head will be resting in Paschimottanasana. So there are variations by which the lower back abdomen, the heart, sternum, and the head may be rested in Paschimottanasana. We now saw how to do Paschimottanasana in the classical form, as well as how to do it using props. As mentioned, Hatha Yoga Pratikpika mentions the importance of Paschimottanasana. Paschim means west, Ut means intense. This is an intense posterior stretch of the spine. It is supposed to revitalize all the nadis in the body, as mentioned by Hatha Yoga Pratikpika. Paschimottanasana, where you keep the legs stretched out in front of you and extend forward, gives, as mentioned, a posterior extension to the spine. However, the midway or the Madhyama Sthiti provides a lengthening to the anterior surface of the spine. Hence, combining the two, Paschimottanasana gives a total extension to the entire length of the spine, both front as well as back. Since the adrenal kidneys are posterior organs, it is particularly important for the health of the kidney as well as the adrenals. People who have digestive issues, sluggish digestive system, are greatly helped through the practice of this pose. It's supposed to ignite the gastric fire. Also, during menstruation, this is a pose that can be safely practiced in the restorative variation. It rests the abdomen and releases the tension on the uterus and hence is safe to practice. In the restorative variation, as we saw, the head can be rested, the chest can be rested, the abdomen can be rested, and therefore a lot of relief is given to the spinal muscles, to the abdominal organs, to the heart as well as head. Particularly, the pressure on the cardiac system, the cardiovascular system is released. It gives revitalization to the heart and brain. Therefore, the entire nervous system, be it sympathetic, asympathetic, the entire nervous system is highly relaxed and rejuvenated.